If you recall, in the first Vipassana Jhana, we really highlighted the quality of effort that's involved in getting to and maintaining that state. That's one of the qualities that predominates in the first Vipassana Jhana, is a sense of continuous refocusing, coming back, um, of effort being present and needed. But with each of the jhana states, whether it's Vipassana or some other form of jhana, some other flavor, regardless of the state, there's a progressive dropping away from one state to the next. As you progress through the jhanas, there's a thinning out that happens, in which we let go of more and more of the world of form. So, what is it that's released in the second Vipassana Jhana? It's effort. Effort is the thing that's let go of most obviously in the second Vipassana Jhana. And this ends up being really, really pleasant. It's really nice to let go of trying so hard to meditate. I mean, in the first Vipassana Jhana, it's not like we're trying hard. We've got a pretty good balanced effort going typically to even get into this state. But it's kind of annoying that we have to continue to maintain this continuous reapplication of attention in order to stay somewhere that we want to be. Like, imagine if you're at home and you're just taking it easy or watching TV or something, and you have to continue to remind yourself to stay at home and continue to, like, if you didn't do that, you just walk out of the door, just walk out into the street or something. You have to keep coming back. Well, it's really nice that we don't have to do that. You can just relax and be at home. And you don't have to think about continuing to have to come back home. You're just there. Same way, same in the second Vipassana Jhana. We're just, the effort drops. This initial and sustained effort that's talked about in the with the two jhanic factors of vitaka and vichara, these drop away, are said to, in the second Vipassana Jhana. It's an interesting question to me as to whether or not they actually drop away, as in they just don't arise anymore, or if instead they drop away in the sense that they become part of the field of what we're noticing. So they become impersonal in that they're just noticed as they are, and they come and go, and they become part of what is noticed in the constant ceaseless arising and passing of experience. So that there's still effort present. It's just not our effort. It's not like I am making an effort. And this is really interesting. Maybe there's a debate to be had here. Do the sensations disappear, or does just this identification with them disappear, and thus something disappears? I don't know. It's an interesting question. You'll have to let me know what you find out if you find yourself in the state or the transition into it. What's it like? Just to very briefly mention this state that we're talking about, the second Vipassana Jhana, it's equivalent to the breakthrough phase in the phases of insight model. And it's also equivalent to the arising and passing away stage in the progressive insight model. So if you're familiar with those models and want to cross-reference them, it's useful to kind of know that there's some corollaries there. What is this state like when we experience the second jhana from the point of view of Vipassana? I want to share a couple descriptions here from a couple meditation teachers that I respect, and whose writing I found helpful. One is a teacher named Shinzen Young, and here he describes the second Vipassana Jhana like this. He says, no sooner is something arising than it's also passing away. No sooner is something spreading as it's also collapsing. Arising and passing, expansion and contraction, impermanence of space and time. This is a great description of what it's like in the second Vipassana Jhana, where in the effort required to be in the state has relaxed, and we're in a more effortless flow of just noticing experience come and go. And here Shinzen's describing some of the ways that we notice how experience changes. Experience changes in terms of both arising and passing away, right? And this is what you could say, this is a way of experiencing change in terms of time, the time dimension. Something comes, stays for a little while, and then it goes. It's impermanent in time. And then it also, change happens in space. So expansion or spreading and collapsing, contracting, expansion and contraction. There's this continuous change in the spatial dimension in which stuff grows and then it shrinks, comes and goes, expands, contracts, impermanence of space and time. So in the second Vipassana Jhana, we become aware of the impermanence of space and time. Here, Mahasi Sayadaw in the Manual of Insight describes it like this. He says, your mindfulness will become so strong, it will seem as if it rushes into the object that arises. It will seem as if objects fall into the noting mind. The knowing mind, too, will clearly and distinctly note each and every single object that arises. You might even think phenomena are arising and passing away instantaneously. Their appearance and disappearance are very fast, like a machine running at full speed, yet I'm able to perceive them all from moment to moment. I don't think I'm missing anything or that there's anything else to be aware of. So this is also, I think, a really valid description of what it's like at the height of the second Vipassana Jhana, in which it feels like everything in our entire field of experience is arising and passing, and it's being noticed as it is. Sounds amazing, right? If you've experienced it, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, you might think, oh, wow, that sounds, I don't know, fill in the blank. Hard to do, or really interesting or profound? What is it like when you're noticing everything in your experience arise and pass? Well, it's interesting to note you aren't any of the experiences that are coming and going, right? If you're noticing them come and go, and if you're okay with them coming and going, which very much the state is marked by incredible okayness and bliss and happiness, um, then you will not be identified with any of those experiences. You'll be just what? Resting is how I would describe it. Resting back. For me, I can remember this time, one of the times that I was cycling through the second Vipassana Jhana, where this quality became even more obvious. I think in part because I was also stoned. It was the first time I'd been stoned since I was a teenager. A number of friends in Boulder, Colorado at the time where I was living, marijuana became medically legal, which basically meant that everyone had access to it because there weren't very strict medical laws. And so a number of friends got their medical cards and we were at a party. And I said, well, I guess I've been a straight edge meditator for the last 10 years. Maybe I'll break outside of the mold and see what all these kids are talking about. You know, I'm in my 20s, of course, so I am a kid, but you know, all the same, I decided to smoke. Um, and then what I noticed was I was continuing to cycle through the same states that I was familiar with in meditation and that I was constantly going through during the day and night anyway. But now it had this sort of exaggerated high lens through which I was looking at it. And what I noticed was I felt like I was the awareness that was behind and beyond all of this experience. I was like the timeless witness, the one who knows, as Ajahn Chah put it, uh, who's untouched by the flow of experience, yet is sort of effortlessly aware of all of it. And I felt like, well, if this body and mind died right now, and all these people who I'm seeing, who almost appear to me as if like actors and actresses in this great play, who are all just playing a role, who don't realize they're not real people, but in fact are obviously actors. Uh, and I just had this clear sense of like, yeah, this is all like a play, you know, Shakespeare's insight, you know, the world is like a stage. Yeah, it's like that. Everything's just arising and passing on the stage, the screen of awareness. And I'm untouched by it. And then somehow I'm not any of this. This is the breakthrough. The breakthrough is in realizing you're not any of the sensations you previously thought you were. If I'm anything, I am the deathless or the unconditioned or something that's beyond awareness. It's like a glimpse of that. We have this glimpse for the first time, and we break through into this realization that We are not the doer. We're not the one who's in control of this process. Now, we may still feel like we're the watcher, though. And so there's some limitations in the second Vipassana Jhana. Maybe we're not the one who's doing it, but we certainly seem to be the one who's aware of it. In the third Vipassana Jhana, the awareness itself begins to crumble, or at least the sense that we are that breaks apart. And that can be disorienting, but it also means it expands and gets bigger. Who we are is actually even bigger than we realize. We're not beyond or outside of reality, observing it. Awareness is part of reality, but that's a further insight. Here we're just really have ossified, in a sense, the sense of awareness. We've kind of dug in to awareness, and that's what you could say we're absorbed in the second Vipassana Jhana, this sense of witnessing awareness. So this is what the Vipassana Jhana is like. We're just resting in the flow of experience as witnessing awareness. Everything's coming and going effortlessly. There's bliss, often joy, elation, ecstasy. All these things that you see, all these translations of Piti and Sukha that you hear are often described in various ways in the second Vipassana Jhana. In terms of the body, it can often feel very good, although the bliss of the first jhana often dies down a bit in the second Vipassana Jhana. But there's still often currents of pleasant energy rising up through the body, sometimes originating down in the lower chakras and coming up through the body, or sometimes even all the way down from the feet up. Often the energy has an upward motion. It tends to be vibratory. It tends to be oscillatory and pleasant. These are the characteristics in the body. It can feel like it's easy to be in one posture for a very long time in this phase, at least while we're in it. You could sit more effortlessly for, maybe if you normally sit for half hour, you could sit for an hour. You might find it's easy to do that and be shocked that you're able. You may also notice your need for sleep diminishing, especially if you're on retreat practicing a lot. It's one of the characteristics of the stage, the less need for sleep. And I've often wondered why that is. Why is it that the body needs less sleep? Well, there's not as much pain and suffering, so there's probably less energy being used. You're just resting more. Also, the states are very, I don't know, they have a quality that's very dreamlike in the terms of the vividness of experience, and the subtlety of experience can be like a dream. So maybe our brain is actually getting into some of these same states that it needs to be in every day as we cycle through the dream state. Maybe we get some of those needs, but I have no idea exactly why, but it seems to be true. And one thing I've really noticed from a social dimension, also relationally, socially, one way to know you're in this state or have been in this state recently is social interactions feel effortless as well. People feel more at ease around you. You feel less socially anxious. You say things naturally and easily. People laugh. There's a lot of smoothness in the interactions and less of a sense of distance and kind of more of a blurring of the boundaries of self and other that occurs in this state. For all these reasons, the second Vipassana Jhana feels great. And the danger, the shadow side of the state is that we'll tend to hold on to the state and want to solidify it or to make it permanent, which is kind of hilarious given the way that we got into the state to begin with, is seeing the impermanence of states. But of course, it's natural considering our human strategy to once we find something that feels good, you often will double down on that and want to, see how far we can take it, how good it can actually be, and so it's natural to do that. But of course, as we move through the second Vipassana Jhana and things change, if we're trying to hold on to the previous jhana, it's very hard to enter fully into the next. And so we can get into the struggle of trying to go back to the second Vipassana jhana, even when our practice is naturally inclining us out of that state. This is one of the major this is one of the main mistakes I see meditators, myself included, have made this many times, and others make, which is to hold on to the previous state because it feels so good. Going from first to second, you kind of want to let go of the effort, but from the second to the third, now we're letting go of the bliss. We're letting go of the good feelings, the very pleasant, positive feelings, especially PT, and that may be harder for some of us to let go of. Not for everyone. Some people find the bliss overwhelming or intense or confusing, and it's actually nice to let go of it. But uh, for most people, I'd say it's difficult to let go of the pleasurable bliss because, in a sense, that bliss stands in for progress. We think I'm feeling good, therefore I'm doing well. Um, and unfortunately, this is just bad. This is like the bad models that we have about progress. It's like, okay, I think if I'm feeling good or if I'm feeling expansion, then I'm doing well. No, 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 that's actually not. Like from a more sophisticated point of view, that's not how it works. There's expansion and contraction, and each of these phases, it's like almost like a sine wave. We go up and then we go down, and we learn how to go with the dance. It becomes much easier. Um, and that is the opportunity in the jhanas from an insight point of view. Why do vipassana with the jhanas? Well, because we cycle through these states all the time. Once we have access to them, we begin to cycle through them. Have you noticed that once you get access to one of these states, it gets easier every time to get back into them? And then at some point they become just normal. You're like, okay, yeah, I know that, and you don't make a big deal about it anymore. And you certainly don't feel like if you're in that state, it's better than being in one of the other states. Once you sort of used to going through them all the time, it's like, oh, it's just another state. And that's it. That's what we're doing here. We're getting familiar with these states, and we're just starting to see that we have access to them, and they're just another state. Um, okay, great. This is a pleasant, effortless state. This is lovely. I remember going in during a long retreat. I was in the second Vipassana Jhana in the cutting edge of my practice. And I went in to see the teacher, Rebecca Bradshaw. And I told Rebecca like what was happening, how everything was just effortless. I wasn't having to do anything. All the practice was just happening on its own. And she just looked at me and she said, okay, great. Well, if it's not broke, we won't try to fix anything. See you later. And so I left the interview after like a few minutes. I was like, okay, well, I guess I've really made it. I've arrived. And then of course by my next interview, I was hurtling through into the third Vipassana Jhana and really confused as to why things weren't so easy and blissful anymore. And that was what it took for me to gradually learn how to just appreciate each of these states for what they are, and to preference them less. And it turns out that by preferencing states less, or not trying to grab on to any particular state, it turns out that when you have the intention to then be in a particular state, it's easier because you're not fixated anywhere. You're not holding on. This is why I love the whole Zen idea of non-fixation. This is the ultimate freedom. The ninth jhana is not having to hold on to any states, just noticing the nature of all states. That jhana is available all the time through all states. But these particular jhanic states are not. They come and go based on causes and conditions, like the phases of the moon or other phases in nature, biological phases. They are that. That's exactly what they are. So they come and go. All right. One last quote I'd like to share with you, and then this kind of marks again the transition between the second and third of the Vipassana jhanas. And this is a quote from my first teacher, Daniel Ingram, in which he says, "However, this stage manifests," and here he's going to use the term A and P, meaning the arising and passing stage. It's the same. However, this stage manifests, the A and P is a major milestone on the path of insight. It is also a point of no return, since soon the meditator will learn what is meant by the phrase, better not to begin. Once begun, better to finish. As they are now too far into this to ever really go back. Until they complete this progress of insight, they are on the ride and may begin to feel that the Dharma is now doing them rather than the other way around. The rapture and all the bells and whistles die down quickly, and the meditator may even be left raw, as if hung over after a night of wild partying. The clarity fades significantly, and the endings of objects become predominant as they progress to knowledge of disillusion, what I would call disillusionment, or the third Vipassana Jhāna. Okay. So the second Vipassana Jhāna is the party, wild party night jhana, and third Vipassana Jhāna is the hangover the next day. Okay, that's a good metaphor.